Have you ever noticed how the moment you lie down at night, in the quiet of your room, that's when your mind starts speaking the loudest? Thoughts you managed to avoid all day suddenly return. The fears you buried rise to the surface. But tonight, instead of fighting them, what if you gently welcomed them in, and let ancient Buddhist wisdom guide you to fall asleep in peace? When we begin to speak our pain, to name our fears, something remarkable happens. They start to loosen their hold on us. One of the reasons surrender is so transformative is because it brings you face to face with the part of yourself that constantly wants to escape discomfort. That voice inside that says, "If I can just fix this, then I'll finally be okay." Buddhism doesn't try to silence that voice. It doesn't tell you to ignore it. Instead, it invites you to listen to it, to understand it, and then to gently step back, to realize that you are not that voice. You are the awareness that hears it. And from that spacious, quiet awareness, something incredible begins to unfold. You start to feel a peace you didn't know was possible. Not because the world has changed, not because your problems vanished, but because your relationship to those problems transformed. You are no longer at war with life. You are no longer at war with yourself. And here, in this sacred space, is where true strength arises. Not from hardening, not from pretending you don't care, but from softening, from allowing, from choosing to walk with your fear instead of endlessly running from it. You might wonder, if I surrender, will I lose my motivation? Will I stop achieving? It's a question many of us quietly ask ourselves. But the truth is, the opposite often happens. When you stop obsessing over outcomes, you actually free up the energy to live with more clarity, more focus, and more genuine joy. You begin to act from love instead of lack, from purpose instead of pressure. You show up more fully, not to prove yourself to anyone, but because simply showing up becomes an act of devotion. A devotion to this moment. A devotion to life itself. A devotion to your own becoming. And when things fall apart, because sometimes they will, when a door closes, you don't collapse, because your peace was never built on the door staying open. It was built on a deeper knowing, a quiet trust that when one path ends, another will always begin. You stop fearing change. You stop fearing the unknown. And you start to trust that even if you don't yet know what's coming, something deep within you is already ready for it. This kind of surrender, of course, takes practice. It takes patience. It asks of you 1,000 small choices. Every single day, choosing to breathe instead of panic, choosing to listen instead of argue, choosing to rest instead of push, choosing to trust instead of control. And though these choices might seem small, they're not. Little by little, they begin to reshape the very patterns of your mind and body. They gently teach your nervous system that it's safe to let go. They remind your heart that it's okay to not have all the answers. They show your mind it no longer needs to fight to survive. It can simply flow. In time, surrender stops feeling like effort. It becomes second nature, not because you stop caring, but because you start caring differently. You begin to care with open hands instead of clenched fists, with a steady heart instead of a scattered mind. You learn to care without grasping, without needing to control every outcome. And in that wide, quiet space, something beautiful begins to happen. You begin to feel peace right in the middle of the unknown. You begin to feel love, even when no one else offers it. You begin to feel whole, even when life still feels incomplete. This is the subtle, sacred art of surrender. It doesn't shout, it doesn't demand, it doesn't chase after what resists. It simply lets go, and in that letting go, it rises. So let that be your practice tonight. Not giving up, but letting go of force, letting go of fear, letting go of the story that says you must have everything figured out right now. The truth is, you don't. You only need to trust the step you're on. And take it softly, gently, without pressure. Because when you surrender, not from weakness, but from wisdom, something extraordinary begins to change. Not outside you, but within, and that inner shift changes everything. As the grip of control loosens, as the breath deepens, as surrender roots itself gently into the soil of your awareness, something even more subtle begins to rise. An ancient understanding that you are not alone, that your presence in this world isn't isolated, that your choices, your thoughts, your speech, your silences, they ripple outward, touching everything, not as punishment, not as reward, but as conversation, as a living, breathing interaction with the very fabric of life itself. This is karma, and everything you've been told about karma, it's likely only scratched the surface. Most people hear the word karma and immediately imagine some sort of cosmic scoreboard. Do good, receive good. Do bad, suffer. But in Buddhism, karma is spoken of in a far deeper, subtler, and more compassionate way. It isn't a tally sheet. It isn't divine revenge. It isn't some fixed sentence written in the sky, forever binding you to what you once did. Karma is movement. Karma is the echo of intention. It's the invisible conversation between your inner world and the world around you, a living dialogue where your thoughts, intentions, and actions speak to life itself. And life quietly responds. And it's happening whether you realize it or not. Every thought you think carries a texture. Every word you speak holds a frequency. Every action you take leaves an imprint behind. These aren't just poetic metaphors. They're energetic truths. You are constantly, moment by moment, in conversation with existence itself. And karma is the current that carries that conversation forward. What's important to understand is this. Karma begins not in what you do, but in why you do it. It starts in awareness, in the root, in the seed hidden beneath the surface of the visible act. When Buddhism speaks of karma, it's not just speaking about your behavior. It's speaking about your volition, that quiet, almost imperceptible flicker of mind that moves before the action ever happens. That spark of intention is where karma is born. Imagine this, you speak kindly to someone. On the surface, it looks like compassion, but if, underneath, your true motive was to be liked, to avoid conflict, or to subtly manipulate how you're perceived, the karmic imprint that moment leaves is entirely different. Karma is not about performance. It's about truth. The universe isn't responding to the mask you wear. It responds to the purity, or distortion, of your motive. And that's why awareness is everything. You can't reshape karma by polishing appearances. You transform karma by transforming the mind that acts. Karma, at its heart, is not a harsh, rigid punishment system. It's a subtle, wise teacher. It mirrors back to you what you are, not what you claim to be. And yes, this can be confronting, but it's also profoundly liberating, because it means you are never forever trapped by your past. You are not doomed by one mistake. You're not sentenced by an old choice you made long ago. The moment you see clearly, the moment you bring conscious awareness to what's really moving you, you begin to purify karma. That's where the dialogue begins anew. When you act from fear, the universe offers a lesson, not to hurt you, but to reveal the fear so it can be released. When you act from genuine compassion, the universe reflects that peace back to you in ways you may never have expected. It's not a vending machine. It's not a system of direct, predictable transactions. It's more like a relationship, a subtle, evolving relationship that deepens with every conscious choice you make. And this is why karma is not fatalistic. You are not a prisoner of your past. You are a living, breathing participant in a dynamic, ever-unfolding process. Yes, The conditions you face today may be the fruits of old seeds you planted long ago. But how you meet those conditions, how you respond to them now, that plants entirely new seeds for the days to come. And this, Buddhism teaches, is your true power. The key is to stop seeing karma as a cold, mechanical scorekeeper, and to start seeing it as a quiet, compassionate compass. It's not here to punish you. It's here to guide you, to reveal where you're aligned with truth, and where you've wandered off course. The discomfort you feel after acting out of ego? That's karma speaking to you. The deep, unshakable peace that rises after a selfless act? That's karma answering. And here's something else worth remembering, it's not always immediate. Some karmic waves take time to return, like seeds that bloom only in the right season. Some karmic results need time, space, and the right conditions before they flower. That's why patience is part of this path. That's why mindfulness is so essential. Because you won't always be able to trace the line from cause to effect. But you can remain devoted to planting seeds of clarity, kindness, and truth. And that devotion, little by little, turns your life into a sacred conversation. You stop reacting blindly. You begin responding intentionally. Your presence becomes clearer. Your choices sharper. Even your mistakes become part of your awakening. Because when mistakes are seen honestly, without denial, they lose their power to repeat themselves. This is one of the most profound lessons karma offers. You are never being punished. You are being shown what still hurts, shown what still drives you unconsciously, shown where you still grasp, or avoid, or escape, not so life can crush you, but so life can free you. And the reason karma shows you what still hurts is not so you can feel shame, but so you can finally feel freedom. Because true freedom doesn't come from avoiding karma. It comes from understanding it. From seeing how every painful loop you keep finding yourself in isn't a curse laid upon you, it's a reflection. A mirror showing you something inside that remains unresolved. And when you have the courage to face it, it softens. But when you deny it, ignore it, resist it, it hardens. Karma is not here to trap you. It's here to wake you up. And it responds with remarkable precision. Not always in the way your ego wants, but always in the way your soul needs. Sometimes the job you lose clears the space for the calling you've been avoiding. Sometimes the heartbreak you swore would destroy you is actually the doorway to a love more honest and whole than anything you've known before. Karma isn't punishing you, it's aligning you, not toward comfort, but toward truth. And this alignment asks for presence. Because karma doesn't just show up in the big, dramatic moments of life. It lives in the small habits, the tiny impulses you either follow or let go. It's in the way you speak when no one else is listening, the thoughts you choose to feed, the energy you leave behind in a room when you exit a conversation, the way you respond to silence, to conflict, to stillness. Every one of these little moments shapes the texture of your path. When you start to see karma this way, you stop playing the victim. You stop waiting for luck to rescue you or fate to crush you. You step into a different role, not as the one who controls life, but as the one who listens to it. And when you listen deeply enough, life starts speaking clearly. You begin to notice the patterns. You start to see how some actions create tension, while others gently dissolve it. You become fluent in the quiet language of karma. And no, this fluency won't make you perfect, but it will make you awake. Awake to the impact of your energy. Awake to the consequences of your choices. Not out of fear, but out of care. Out of devotion to the kind of world you're helping to shape every time you act. Every time you speak, every time you think. Buddhism teaches about what's called the three doors of karma: body, speech, and mind. Each one is a doorway through which you participate in this sacred conversation. And you don't have to be a monk or a scholar to walk through them wisely. You just have to pay attention. Is your speech creating peace or division? Is your action coming from kindness or pressure? Is your mind rooted in truth or tangled in delusion? The more you ask these gentle questions, the clearer the dialogue becomes. You stop stumbling in the dark, and you begin to walk in quiet rhythm with something much larger than yourself. That rhythm isn't always easy, but it's always honest, and it's in that honesty that real peace begins. There's a reason karma is so misunderstood, because it challenges the ego. It takes away the comforting illusion that life is random, that we are powerless, that things just happen to us. But once you begin to see clearly, you can't unsee it. You start to feel the feedback loop. You notice how certain thoughts drain your energy while others restore it. You watch how resentment poisons connection, while forgiveness releases a tightness you didn't even realize you were carrying. These are karmic moments, and they're happening all the time. This is why practice matters. Not for perfection, but for refinement. The more you practice presence, the more sensitive you become. You won't need karma to knock you down to get your attention anymore. You'll start listening now, with care, with humility, with love, because love is karma too. Not attachment, not control, but the kind of love that gives freely, that listens deeply, that holds space without expectation. And when your actions begin to rise from that place, karma shifts, your life softens, you start to meet people who reflect your own inner growth. You find yourself drawn to spaces that nourish you, not because you manipulated life to get your way, but because you finally stopped resisting its natural flow. There's no shortcut to this, no secret formula, just presence, just honesty, and the courage to look at your life, not as a random collection of unrelated events, but as a mirror. Every experience a message, every relationship a lesson, every challenge an invitation. Now, some people hear this and feel overwhelmed, as if karma means every tiny thing will come back to haunt them. But that's not how it works. Karma isn't trying to punish your ignorance. It's offering you endless, compassionate chances to grow out of it. It's the quiet engine of your evolution. As you settle into the stillness of this night, and your breath begins to slow, let your mind drift to a quieter place. What if, as you fall asleep, the universe was gently listening, not just to your words, but to the energy behind them, to the thoughts you never speak, and to the intentions you barely notice? Tonight, let's rest in that awareness, and discover the wisdom it holds. Karma gives you exactly what's needed, not to shame you, not to punish you, but to shape you, to gently nudge you back into alignment with your deeper truth. That's why kindness matters. That's why integrity matters. That's why stillness matters. Because what you offer to the world doesn't simply disappear. It leaves a mark. It echoes through the fabric of your life. And it comes back, not always in the way you expect, but always in the way you need. That's the quiet, hidden beauty of karma. It's intelligent, it's intimate, it knows you, and it's always inviting you back to balance, back to presence, back to truth. And so, the practice continues, not to escape karma, but to participate in it fully, to live in a way that leaves soft, careful footprints, to speak in a way that clears the air rather than pollutes it, to think in a way that uplifts you, even when no one else can hear. Because here's something we forget, someone is always listening. The universe hears what's behind your words. It senses what you won't dare to say out loud. It reads the space between your actions, the intention beneath the gesture, the silence between the words. And it responds, not to punish you, but to gently remind you of who you really are, beneath the old patterns, beneath the ego, beneath the fear. Karma isn't about perfection. It's about honesty, about awareness, about responsibility, not in some heavy, moralistic way, but in a sacred, empowering one. You aren't here to chase approval. You aren't here to manipulate outcomes. You're here to walk with awareness, to speak with integrity, to act with compassion, to live as if the universe isn't something outside you, but something within you. Responding to every vibration you release into it, because it is. And once you truly feel that, once you know it, not just in your mind, but in your bones, you can't live unconsciously anymore. You begin to choose with care. You begin to move with intention. You begin to trust that what you give, you live. This is karma, not superstition, not fear, not punishment, but relationship, a sacred, ongoing, alive conversation, a conversation that never ends. Every thought you release, every action you take, every moment of clarity, and every moment of confusion, it all echoes. You are always speaking to the universe, and it is always responding. And now, another question rises gently in the stillness. If karma flows from intention, and everything is in constant motion, what is it all built upon? What lies beneath the shifting patterns, the changing forms, the endless stories and temporary roles we cling to? What remains, when you peel away every identity, every attachment, every expectation? At the heart of Buddhist understanding is a truth so radical, so luminous, it undoes everything the mind tries to hold onto. It doesn't give you something new to grasp. It reveals that there's nothing to grasp at all. This is the teaching of shunyata, the wisdom of emptiness. And emptiness isn't nothingness. It's not a cold absence. It's not a void in the negative sense. It is spaciousness. It is openness. It's the deep, liberating realization that no thing, no self, no object, no moment, exists in isolation. Nothing arises by itself. Everything exists in relationship. Every event, every thought, every experience is born from countless causes and conditions, woven together in a web too vast for the mind to trace. And when you truly see this, not just as an idea, but as a living, breathing truth, it changes everything. You stop clinging. You stop demanding permanence in a world made of change. You stop trying to build a stable, lasting identity on things that were never meant to carry the weight of a self. You begin to loosen your grip on the idea of mine and me. And you start to soften into something much more honest, flow. Understanding emptiness doesn't make you cold. It doesn't make you detached from life. If anything, it makes you fall more gently in love with it. Because you see how fleeting it all is. And in seeing that, you cherish it differently. It makes you clear that your suffering doesn't come from impermanence itself, but from the desperate wish for things to be permanent. From the painful habit of treating what is fleeting as if it could last forever. From grasping at shadows and then wondering why your hands are always empty. But when you stop grasping, something shifts. You begin to trust, not because life suddenly feels safe or predictable, but because you realize you were never in control to begin with. You realize the unknown is not your enemy. The unknown is the nature of everything. And the more you resist it, the deeper it hurts. Emptiness reveals the vast space in which life unfolds. It's the silence between your thoughts, the stillness behind every movement, the open sky in which clouds appear, and then gently vanish. When you learn to rest in that space, you stop fearing the next moment. You stop clinging to the last one. You begin to open, and this openness, it isn't passive. It's deeply alive. Emptiness allows you to engage fully with the present, because you're no longer distorting it through your attachments. You see clearly. You respond directly. You no longer need life to confirm your identity. And in doing so, you're finally free to meet it as it is. And yet, the mind struggles with this. It wants something solid, something it can hold. It wants clear lines between self and other, good and bad, success and failure. But Shunyata, the teaching of emptiness, gently reveals that these divisions are constructs, useful, sometimes, but ultimately empty of any permanent, independent meaning. Even your sense of I is not a fixed point. It's a process, a continuous flow of sensations, perceptions, thoughts, emotions, all interdependent, all conditioned. There's nothing in you that stands alone, untouched by the rest of this world. And the beauty of this is, it's not depressing. It's liberating, because it means you're not trapped. You're not frozen inside some rigid identity. You can change. You can grow. You can release the old stories that no longer serve you. And this is where a cosmic kind of trust begins to take root. Not in certainty, but in spaciousness. In the quiet knowing that your worth, your meaning, your peace, don't come from what you can cling to, but from the awareness that holds it all. And that awareness, it's not empty in a bleak sense. It's full of potential, full of wisdom, full of peace. When you let go of rigid definitions, you begin to see beyond appearances. You begin to notice how the person who hurt you was acting from their own conditioned pain. You begin to see how your own fears were never truly personal. They were just ripples in a vast, interconnected sea of causes and conditions. This doesn't make you passive. It doesn't make you naive. It makes you compassionate. Because now, you're not reacting to surface-level triggers. You're responding from a deeper place of understanding. And that response has clarity. It has balance. It no longer clings to outcomes. It no longer spirals in fear. Because in the light of emptiness, even fear is seen for what it really is. A thought, a wave, a passing condition. It rises. It falls. It's not the truth of who you are. So much of our suffering comes from holding too tightly. Holding on to roles, to status, to relationships, to ideas. We attach meaning to these things. And when they inevitably shift, we suffer. But emptiness, gently, lovingly invites you to hold everything more softly. To care deeply, yes. But without possession. To love fully, yes. But without needing to own. And when loss comes, as it always does, you grieve. But you don't collapse. You hurt. But you don't lose yourself. Because you've stopped confusing impermanent things with your permanent nature. You've stopped asking the world to stay still so you can feel safe. That is the great shift. From trying to build security on fixed things, to trusting in the openness itself. From fearing the unknown, to meeting it with calm, steady curiosity. From clinging to something solid, to resting in the vastness of what is. This shift doesn't happen all at once. It unfolds in layers. At first, emptiness can feel strange, even frightening, because it dismantles everything the ego depends on. But with gentle, steady practice, you begin to feel its truth. You begin to relax into it. And what once felt like losing ground, slowly begins to feel like finding space. And that space is sacred. And what allows you to respond, instead of simply react. To move through life without clinging? To change, without fear? It's this open, boundless spaciousness we call emptiness. It's what makes creativity possible. It's what invites flexibility, joy, and ease. It's what allows compassion to arise, because you're no longer trapped in the prison of me versus you. This versus that, gain versus loss. You begin to see the shared emptiness beneath all forms. And in that realization, you find a deeper kind of connection. Not through similarity, not because we're all the same, but because we all arise from the same vast source. Even time itself softens in the light of shunyata. The past is no longer a trap. The future no longer a threat. What matters is how you meet this moment. With this breath, with this awareness, and in this quiet space, trust begins to grow. Not trust in outcomes, not trust that everything will turn out the way you want, but trust in presence itself. Trust in the process of life as it unfolds, even when you don't understand it. And this trust, it isn't belief. It isn't built on hope or on expectation. It's built on direct seeing, on the wisdom you touch when you see that everything changes, that nothing exists independently, that all things are empty of fixed, permanent solidity, and therefore, open to shift, to soften, to transform. This kind of seeing doesn't disconnect you from life. In fact, it connects you to it even more deeply. Because you're no longer trying to control the river. You're swimming in it. You're moving with the current instead of fighting against it. You're learning to float in the unknown. And in this way, emptiness isn't a lack. It's not a void. It's the very ground of being. The vast, open space in which life itself unfolds. And when you trust that space, you stop needing to know everything. You stop fearing what's next. You trust not because you hold a perfect map, but because you've learned how to walk without one. This knowing isn't an idea. It's embodied. It shows up in how you speak, in how you move, in how you respond to the unexpected. You become less reactive, less tense, more present, more attuned. You no longer feel the urge to fill every silence. You no longer need to explain everything. You no longer spiral into panic when your plans fall apart. Because you see clearly, plans are empty, control is empty, identity is empty, and not empty in a bleak, meaningless sense, but in a freeing one. Free to change, free to let go, free to respond with care, not fear. Even your sense of purpose becomes clearer in emptiness. Not as a fixed goal you must achieve, but as a living, breathing, responsive way of moving through life. You don't need to define yourself in rigid terms. You simply live with presence, with care, knowing that meaning doesn't come from what you hold, but from how you hold it. And that is one of the final, quiet beauties of shunyata. It teaches you how to live without armor, how to meet life as it is, without filters, without resistance, how to stay open, even when things fall apart, how to love without grasping, how to act without ego, how to rest in the fullness of this empty, ever-changing moment. And this is what real freedom looks like. Not the absence of problems, but the absence of clinging. Not the promise of certainty, but the presence of trust. And in that trust, something profound quietly unfolds. Not a belief, not a dogma, but a steady, wordless knowing that everything you've ever needed is already here. In the space between your thoughts, in the breath you're taking right now, in the vast silence of your own awareness. That is shunyata, and it isn't far away. It's not some distant state you need to chase. It's what remains when you stop reaching, when you stop naming, when you stop turning away from the simple, radiant truth, that everything is empty, and in that emptiness, free. So now, breathe, let go, and let go again, not to fall, but to rise, because this universe was never meant to be controlled. It was meant to be trusted. And that trust, it begins in the space you're resting in, right now. And as you rest here in this vast, quiet space, may you feel a little lighter, a little softer, a little more trusting in this wild, open life. You don't have to figure it all out. You don't have to control it. You are already part of the rhythm, the river, the spaciousness. If this reflection touched you tonight, I invite you to stay connected. Subscribe to Daily Dharma Wisdom for more gentle teachings like this. Leave a like, or share this with someone whose heart might need this calm reminder. And when you wake tomorrow, carry this ease with you. Breathe gently, walk softly, and trust the unfolding. Thank you for listening. Thank you for being here. And thank you for walking this quiet path with me. I'll meet you again, very soon.